Illinois may claim to be the land of Lincoln, but Indiana is where the 16th president spent his formative years.
The Lincoln family moved here when Abraham Lincoln was 7, and they spent 14 years here, so they moved to Illinois when he was 21.
The Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial in Lincoln City, Indiana, attempts to preserve and contextualize Lincoln's time in the state.
Thomas Lincoln owned land in Kentucky. They lost their land at least twice because of dubious land laws, and Indiana had just become a state. He could actually buy land from the government. So he decided to buy 160 acres of land here in Indiana so that the title would be clear. People come to visit this park because when you walk on the ground here at the park, you're walking on ground that Abraham Lincoln walked on. He spent 14 years here roaming through these woods. He helped his dad create a homestead here. They built a cabin. They cleared land for their crops and their kitchen garden. So they were here. They experienced life for 14 years as pioneers. So people want to be a part of that. They want to come and see and recognize where he grew up.
A bronze footprint stands where historians believe the Lincolns' home once stood, and a working pioneer homestead demonstrates to visitors what life was like for a typical pioneer family.
They were here from 1816 until 1830. What we're depicting here is that time frame of Abraham Lincoln's life. So some of the things that we are growing here are heritage plants that would have been seen and grown in their gardens. Well, they would have had to grown everything that they needed to be able to survive. And they would have had to properly store their food to last through the winter. So what they grew and what they harvested would be what they had to eat. And so they really had a lot of work to do every day just to be able to survive.
Life was hard. It was a very forested area. A lot of trees needed to be cleared. They had to grow their own food. They had to raise their own animals. So it was very subsistence farming, depending on the weather, depending on if you could get your crops to grow that year was how successful you were going to be. A lot of the fencing that you see around us, the fencing was to keep wild animals out. So when they were here, Abraham Lincoln wrote about panthers and he wrote about bears that were still here in the area. So those kinds of dangers were still around too for these pioneers.
Despite the hardships, Abraham Lincoln thrived in Indiana.
Thomas Lincoln was a carpenter, so he had a carpentry shop. He worked as a carpenter for the people in the community. He really emphasized determination and grit. That's what he kind of gave to Abraham. And then Nancy, she also really encouraged Abraham's love of learning. So he only went to school for about a year total. When he was learning, it was a lot of learning on his own.
The Lincolns would also know tragedy during their time in Indiana. Nancy, Abraham's mother, died during an outbreak of milk sickness, spread through the milk of cows that ingested wild, toxic plants.
She died when he was 9. He actually helped his dad build the coffin that she was buried in. So a lot of trauma there. 10 years later, he had lost his sister. She died in childbirth here. So she is buried actually in what is now the state park across the street. So a lot of trauma, a lot of hardships. It was just a hard life for pioneers.
Another outbreak of milk sickness would push the Lincolns to depart Indiana for Illinois, where Abraham would grow to become a lawyer, politician, and eventually the President of the United States. And while much has changed since Lincoln's time in Indiana, the lessons that visitors can take are still highly relevant.
I think all national park sites are important for the nation. So we have 424 currently national park sites in the country, and they all come together to tell the American story. So this particular park site is all about Abraham Lincoln's youth. Those lessons, those people, events, things that happen to us in our life that help us create us and develop us into these adults that we become. So this was that place for Abraham Lincoln, the lessons he learned from his father, his mom, his stepmother, his sister, even his neighbors and friends. Those all went into the development of Abraham Lincoln and the leader that we remember in our history today.